Okay, so I'm joined by Mike Hranica, best known for his work with the Devil Wears Prada. But we are not here to talk about that today, are we? We are actually here to talk about some solo work you've been doing by the name of Town of Lake and an upcoming record, I believe in October. Is that correct?
Yep.
Perfect. Now, firstly, what made you decide to actually, move forward with a solo work or solo work such as Town of Lake?
So it was over 10 years ago that I helped co-create a band called God Alone. We made a record and an EP. We did two short tours and then just kind of, without saying, kind of closed the doors on the project. I don't know if it'll ever become anything again, but from there, I kind of really found my voice and was able to create music that I felt more connected to, besides, the metal I've been playing with Prada since I was a young teenager. So once God Alone it became inactive, I knew what I was searching to do with that project, and I just wanted to kind of keep the wheels turning. And from there, it became Town of Lake, and yeah, now we have a record.
Cool. So, where did the name Town of Lake actually come from?
So Town of Lake is a neighborhood here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is where I've been living for about 6 years. I no longer live in that neighborhood. I don't really often hear people even refer to the neighborhood as that name, and I don't quite exactly recall where I first saw it, perhaps just like on a sign. But yeah, there's some kind of contrast there that I found attractive and I jotted it down. And having the last name that I have, I thought it'd be kind of wonky to call something Mike Hranica. So yeah, it was always kind of one of those ones that just pop in my notes.
Cool. Now, Lilac, the upcoming album, now it really is a massive departure from The Devil Wears Prada. What were the drivers to create something, so different? It's so really very unique.
Yeah, you know, just the music I often listen to. I put up a playlist recently to try to give people an idea of what is spinning here at home on my turntable or, my headphones when I'm on tour. It's nothing like what the Devil Wears Prada plays, and the music I do listen to is very informative of Town of Lake. And yeah, I think it's just using my voice, being able to create and express myself in a very abstract nature is very relevant to me. And I think Town of Lake is that vehicle for me. And as we keep moving along now with this album coming out soon, I look forward to creating more.
Cool. Now, I'll confess, I've only listened to it twice. The first time I put my earphones in, walking to work, and I thought, right, let's just listen to what have you got to offer? And got to work, and I'll confess, I was there just going, I really need to sit down and actually absorb this because it was very difficult to listen to just as background music, like a lot of music is for us. So, was there anything specific or any audience you were aiming to reach with this particular record? Because as I said, it's really unique, and even now I'm still trying to piece together in my own mind where it goes from how it speaks to me. So was there an audience that this was aimed at specifically, or was this something just for you because you had this outlook to create something so unique?
Certainly the latter. I heard a quote not long ago, audience comes last. And that I definitely follow that. With Prada, audience comes first or very towards the front of the queue,
Yeah.
With this, it's kind of rebelling against that or contrasting against that, in that there's no intention of having some sort of ideal satisfied audience or listener. Obviously, I want people to hear the music, otherwise I wouldn't even release it. But it is angular, it is complex and difficult in ways that I think certainly butt up against what a listener that's accustomed to something like the Devil Wears Prada or listening to rock radio would be comfortable with. It's not music that I imagine, a fun car ride. It would entertain. I find a lot of intimacy with certain bands and music that I like, and I find that my ideal means of consuming music is here in my dining room or here in my home with my turntable and my records. And everything around Lilac as a product as well is designed around a vinyl record. So as like a casual, background listen or throw something on, it's probably going to be very thorny and difficult versus, some kind of easy listening.
Now, the first sort of single or the first real release we had it from it was No Gloss. Now, how do you feel this has been received? Obviously, as you say, it's what you've produced here is more for yourself as your own creative outlet. But how do you feel it's been received by the general audience that probably heard the Town of Lake coming out, you doing some solo stuff, potentially were quite shocked, like myself, just going, this isn't quite what I was expecting. Don't get me wrong, I thought it was fantastic, and I love this sort of weird creative thing that actually draws in loads of different emotions. But how do you personally feel it was received by your average listener, I suppose?
From what I've seen, it hasn't been like, an atrocity or
Yeah.
or horrendous. I knew there would be negative comments. When the Devil Wears Prada releases music, I've very much distanced myself. I don't read YouTube, I don't read Instagram. It really only sours my mood more so than do anything productive. With Town of Lake, it's very different because I'm self-releasing this, so it turns out inevitably I receive more feedback than I'm accustomed to. Just in that, I'm running the YouTube page myself. I'm doing everything data and statistically everything around the album myself. I've had some wonderful people give me plenty of advice, including Paul, the Devil Wears Prada's manager and whatnot. But from what I've seen, it's been good. If I released the no gloss lyric visualizer and it was just 100% thumbs down, I probably would have been pretty bummed out by that. Or if, I hadn't sold one LP pre-order. Again, this everything Town of Lake is for myself and to seek my own truth or define my own truth and express myself. So it money is in the background, but at the same time, when you put lots of money into something, it's like I need to see something out of it, or
Yeah.
otherwise I can't feed the dogs and myself. So there is that. All the same, though, I'm thankful for people taking the time to listen thus far. And yeah, it's only been one song. So even the people that are really negative about it, I'm like, how can you be so hateful about like about 4 minutes of something rather
Yeah.
than an album's worth? So we'll see how the rollout continues.
Yeah, I guess inevitably you can't please everyone, and I suppose with a record like this, from my own perspective, it's something that, as I viewed it, is something that's created for yourself. But now, do you have any sort of personal favorite songs from the album, or anything that you feel like you're really trying to convey from any of those songs?
Yeah, there are certainly moments that I really look forward to people hearing. The Valley is the next single, if I have that correct. And that's certainly one of my favorite songs. It's sort of this distorted, grotesque dream, sort of horror imagery and whatnot. And again, this kind of strange trip. The first track of the album is two songs, but I created it together and just made it into one track. The back half of that track is called Sin Titulo, which is untitled in Spanish, which I felt silly not recognizing, but I was down in Mexico City and had some strange run-ins and occurrences that I made and created this like sort of drunken prostitute figure named Stella Marie and whatnot. I think that's a kind of cool journey to take, opening up the album. Reading Off My Dreams is a hateful song, and I think it really comes through in this, I don't know, in a sort of brutality that I haven't really often used. Usually anything brutal in terms of me expressing myself is yelling in a metalcore band. So it has that angst via different means. So I think those are three examples that I certainly look forward to people hearing.
Yeah. See, I think it was The Valley you mentioned, and that title or that song rings a bell as the one that really stood out to me. And I think your description sort of meets how I felt with it. I think I was sort of listening to it going, do you know what? I don't think I want to be having like the flu or those weird flu type dreams while listening to this, because that could create something quite fun or terrifying. Take your pick, I guess, if I'm honest. Now, who are or what perhaps are your major influences, especially when you're creating such a unique album?
Yeah, I think the biggest one coming out was, I went into this project. I went down to Chicago, met with my buddy Andy, who mixed and recorded and provided instrumentation for this. And I was like, I want something like kind of tribal, repetitive, like Swans. And he was like, oh, like atonal Scott Walker. And I had always seen Scott's name, and this wasn't too long after Scott had passed away, but I knew he did a collaborative record with Sun, which is one of my top three favorite bands. So when I got soused from Scott Walker and Sun, that was one of the most informative LPs to then create Town of Lake and create the songs that we made. From there, I've dealt further in to Scott's work going back to I think the 70s. And it's been amazing. Even lately, like I've been listening to a lot of like Lou Reed and T-Rex, and oh, I was making something that was so derivative of this even before I really got to know, the corners of a record like Transformer. So it's been really amazing. I've kind of with Town of Lake, it's really rearranged my perspective about how often music looks at like, oh, like David, like Bowie informed this, so we're all going to rip off Bowie, but then like we're not looking so much at like what Bowie was listening to or what he was associating with it so much. So I've kind of tried in terms of inspiration, tried to kind of tear away the sort of middle ground from now and then the early rock of like the 60s and 70s, or even like the guitar even before then, early jazz guitar and whatnot. So the fidelity and the quality of and whatnot is also very informative of creating instruments and Town of Lake tracks that are very intentionally sounding broken or cold rather than, filling your senses so much. So to answer your question a little shorter, I think Scott Walker has been very definitive. I always say that my favorite artists are Nick Cave's, Sun, and Shellac. And I think while Shellac always created music that is more to a rock formula than anything that I do, Steve Albini's always been one of my biggest icons in my life. And what he's done with guitar from Big Black to Shellac is very informative as well.
Now, I'm not sure about the US, but would you take this record, or would you take Town of Lake on tour perhaps? See how do you feel it would be received in a live environment?
I love playing live. When God Alone was playing live shows, it was quite the joyous occasion for me. It was very different than performing with the Devil Wears Prada, and I really relished it. With that said, I think a lot of music is designed to be played live, and this was not. Like Lilac was created as this sort of improvisational thing as we Mason, Andy, and I kind of just would either start with like a sound or a loop and developed a lyric, or just sit with a lyric and then create a soundscape around it. I'm not sure how that would translate, even watching some of the more avant-garde artists I've seen somehow take their music and put it in a live setting. I'm not sure what that would look like for Town of Lake, but I do know I don't have the time to figure it out right now
Fair enough.
because I was supposed to have an off year, and next thing I knew, I'm traveling like every weekend for the Devil Wears Prada. So I think looking forward to Town of Lake further down the road, I think it would be an interesting exercise to intentionally make music that could be placed within the live setting. But with that said, that's not a discipline I used at all when creating the album. So as much as I would love to perform these songs live, I'm not sure what that looks like. And it's not one of my, not a priority at the moment. I'd rather make more songs right now.
Fair enough. So the album is, if I remember correctly, it's released in October, I believe. And you've mentioned, I think, The Valley is the next upcoming release. Are there any going to be any other releases in between? Any other sort of like surprises that we can see and get a bit more of a taste of the record before it actually comes out in all its glory?
Yeah, we're planning another single at the end of September. Where at another song. I would love to do another video for that, but videos are expensive. and require a lot of time. So we'll see where that lands. But I am in talks with a friend about creating something visually to check out around the third single. And then, yeah, Lilac drops October 4th.
Perfect. Well, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today. As I said, like the album, big shock listening to it for me. So I'm really interested to actually sit down and try listening to it more. Really is for me a bit of a time thing when it's such a unique record, but I am looking forward to listening to it more and hearing more of what you've got to come, especially away from the Devil Wears Prada, because it is fantastic to actually not just chat to, but also hear music from someone's more creative side. So thank you so much for chatting to us today.
No, I really appreciate it. I'm trying to get the word out on this project, and I appreciate you taking the time and helping me get it in front of listeners.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you
You
later.
as well. Thank you.